I'll start. Hi, and welcome to Redeeming Babble. My name is Jacob.
I'm Sam.
I'm Jay.
And today, one of our guests, you can guess which one, brought something forward. I don't know what you call it. She wants to do a Bible study, so I was like, yeah, let's do it.
I was like, let's do a Bible study on camera.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to talk about Ruth because it's one of my favorite books in the Bible. And I want to talk about with a fellow rom-com woman lover.
I love love. So this book is about love.
Yes, the way that I see it.
I agree. It is about love. Fine.
Finding love.
Go for it.
Which camera am I supposed to look at?
You're going to look at this camera.
Okay, that makes
Okay.
sense.
Good, because I was looking
at both.
You know what? Because there's I've been showing people that text you said.
What text did I send?
About I meant more in the U.S.
I meant more than US what?
About Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
But I've not been showing them the rest of it because I just think it's
You're
funny.
so annoying. I knew you were going to take it out of context, too. That's why
You still said it without explaining it.
without context.
No, I was trying to send my words out, and I was like, okay, I need to send this other part.
We were
too.
talking about where we want to go, right? And I was
Mhm.
like, I want to go to Alaska, and she said, I meant more in the U.S. And I was like, girl,
No,
I literally
But as soon as I knew that he was going to take it out of context, so right after that, I said,
took
I
her
know
a good
it's in the
30
US.
seconds.
I know it's in the U.S.
So you
but
cut out, I know it's in
more.
the U.S.
Because I screenshotted it as soon as she sent it because I was like, girl.
And I was like, I know it's in the U.S., but I meant more like in the land, like in the United. Like I don't want
Mainland.
In the
mainland.
mainland.
And he was like, blah, 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 blah.
He said,
I was like,
he
you still
said,
said that. I was like,
He said, I was thinking of going to Puerto Rico. And she's like, no, I meant the U.S.
yeah.
I know it's in the U.S. We went over this.
Okay, so Jay, if you want to lead us, 'cause
Sure.
I don't know what
Okay.
you're doing.
We're reading Ruth because I wanted to read it again. Well, not much I wanted to read it. I felt like God told me it was like, read Ruth again for whatever reason. But I love Ruth, so I was like, yeah. If you don't know, I guess not the story. I don't want to give Ruth spoilers, but the whole.
You've read Ruth before.
I feel like, did you read it?
I read it. I've read it before.
Okay.
I just reread it 10
yesterday.
minutes
10
ago.
minutes ago.
I read it this morning.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, oh, Ruth.
No, I feel like Ruth is very short too, so
Mhm.
it's kind of like I make it longer than it actually is because it really isn't that long. I just like it a lot.
There's a lot of depth to it, though.
There is. So we'll start with chapter 1.
Are you gonna read through it, or are you gonna summarize?
I'm not really gonna read through it. I was just
Okay.
gonna summarize.
I'll put the
because-
verses.
Yeah. So
Hopefully this time I actually do that.
please
I
actually do
noticed
that.
that.
I have a
I
bunch
keep
of
saying that,
sticky
and I
notes
keep not
everywhere.
doing it.
Okay, so it starts with our main character, Naomi. And then Naomi loses her husband. She loses her husband while she's in Bethlehem.
No. So they go from Bethlehem, and there's a famine going on
Uh-huh.
over there,
In
and so they
Israel, yeah.
moved to Moab. Despite they weren't following God's will at that time, so they were like, no, I need to take care of my family. What's his name? Elimelech.
Elimelech. I think.
Elimelech.
Yeah, leave me alone.
Yeah.
He was like,
Not
I need
his
to take
husband.
care of my family. We're gonna go move to Moab, and so they walk across the Dead Sea, and they go to Moab, and that's where they bring their 2 sons. What's the 2 sons' names?
Mahlon and Chilion.
Malam and
Yes.
Chilion. Okay, they take the 2 sons there, and then they
And that's when her husband dies.
Yeah,
right?
that's when they build a
So
family.
her husband dies,
Well, yeah.
and then I forget. Correct me
Well,
if I'm wrong.
actually,
Do
so-
her
Mhm.
sons get married before or after her
Her
husband
sons.
dies?
Okay, so the way it works is because they had not that they had to get married, but they do. Let me actually reread it because I want to double check. I'm pretty sure that is the case.
The dead silence.
Actually, it doesn't say necessarily, but I'm pretty sure that whenever they had moved, and I'm pretty sure that the sons had gotten married before.
I think the sons
Before
got
this-
married.
Before the dad died.
Dad died.
I thought
But
the sons got married after. Oh
Does
no, yeah, it says right here because look, it says, but Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The way,
Okay.
the way I interpreted
So
that.
the way
yeah,
that it-
which I guess based on the linear storytelling, yeah, maybe after, maybe
So
before.
husband dies. Then her 2 sons get married to Moabite women,
Mhm.
which
Oprah and Ruth.
which aren't you're supposed to marry women from
Is from the Israelites.
Israel, but they didn't.
At least
So
that's the custom.
to each their own. And then Naomi Heard. Hold on, let me read it, or let me reread it.
Your own race. That's what they were. But I get it. It's because it was for a different purpose. I get that. It's so that they wouldn't. I was gonna say dirty themselves,
Okay.
which is even. It sounds bad too.
So Naomi, I want to focus on Naomi right now because she's
She
the
takes.
one.
Yeah, she takes.
We're talking about
lead,
right now.
at least in the
So
first couple
her
chapters.
husband dies after leaving her home, and then her 2 sons get married to Moabite women, and then her sons die.
Yeah.
And like in Naomi's position, I'd be like, what's going on?
Out. Yeah.
I'd literally, because I'm like, what's going on?
Well, she does crash out.
She does.
She's like, God hates me.
She literally does.
She changed her name to Mara.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But
Okay, go for it.
So she's like, go back to your mother's home to Ruth and Oprah. Right. So she's telling these women, like, I have nothing for you. Like, there's no reason for you to stay with me. Which I was like, I don't know. Me being me and me not being Naomi, I'd be like, can you stay with me? Because I'm going to be lonely. Like, I don't want to be by myself.
Yeah, but I mean, part of it is that Naomi's, I mean, she says it that she's like, there's no use, not like, hey, y'all suck, go away. She's
No, it's
just
more
like,
I'd rather.
I care for y'all. Y'all should, if y'all are with me, you're stuck with me.
And she has like no, like in the time you need a man. She has no man, no any kind of guy. She owns
has
nothing.
nothing.
She literally, she can't even feed herself at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
So-
why she's like,
She's like, go back to your parents.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
They will take care of you. You can remarry. You are young. You are beautiful. And they're like, oh, they're crying. Obviously, you don't want to leave the person that you love.
Yeah.
And then eventually Oprah leaves and says, okay.
I know, which
okay,
I
so
think
you're
is a
saying
little bit
Oprah?
of. Is it Elpira?
It's Orpah.
Orpah.
Okay, because I was like, am I going crazy?
Like
or y'all saying Oprah?
I'm saying Oprah.
Is she giving stuff
It's
out?
ORPAH. Oprah is OPRAH.
We're
Oh, can we
dyslexic.
refilm all of this?
No, y'all made a mistake. Y'all keep
Orpah. I said Oprah because I don't know how to.
Orpah.
It's because you're my. Never mind.
It's
Orpah.
It's because we're dyslexic.
Yeah, that's exactly
That's
what
why
I
I've
was
been
gonna
reading
say.
it like all my life.
It's okay,
Orpah.
Sam. Now you
Orpah.
know.
Like, I didn't know Oprah was a biblical name.
Orpah. I know. That's what I was literally thinking. I was like, oh my gosh, is that why
I'm
they
like,
named
is that
her
why they named Oprah Oprah?
That's literally why I
No,
thought that.
it's
Orpah.
not. Oprah's not a biblical name. I just want to. I don't think
Orpah.
so.
I don't know.
Orpah.
I am so.
I've never heard it in my life.
I can read the stories, but I just don't. I can't read the
names
names.
are hard.
It's like you read the first part of the name and you're like, I give up on this.
Yes.
You're like, it's
You're
whatever.
like, gee, nah.
Sure.
Orpah. Okay.
You get what I
Okay,
meant by that.
so one part that I wrote down is that Naomi came from the path of God, or she came
Mhm.
from, she was on the path with God,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And then she strayed from it, and when stuff started looking bad, which I think is something that we can do a lot, is where it's like things start to look bad in our lives, and we're like, I'm just gonna do it myself, or I'm just gonna take the reins a bit and just kind of take care of things on my own.
Austere. Yeah.
And then I think the reason that Naomi did like not listen to her husband, but kind of follow her husband so easily without any like, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea, is because she didn't she didn't trust God as much as she
Trusted her husband.
yeah. Which I understand, because I feel like in these times they put a lot of like pressure on, like, this is your husband and you have to follow your husband.
Mhm.
Like there's
Which is
no question about it. And yeah, so hold on. Then back to the story. Naomi's telling Ruth and Orpah that they should go back to their families to find other husbands.
Mhm.
And Orpah's like, peace, like, you got it, girl. Like, I'm out of here. Which I find is so funny, because the way it's written, at least in my version, is kind of like shade to Orpah, where it's like, Orpah left. But
yeah, it's like they both are like, oh, I don't want to leave Naomi.
literally, and then
Oprah's like, oh, okay.
she's like, I don't want to go, but I'm gonna see y'all on the flip
He's
side.
Deuces. I'll see y'all when
You
I
don't
see
have
so
to
y'all.
tell me
funny.
twice. Tell me once.
She's
and my
like, thank you
conscience
for
is cleared.
telling me.
She's literally.
I was just waiting for you to say.
She's like, I didn't want to bring it up, but
She
which
might have
I
been
find
yeah.
also interesting, because it shows two different types of women. It's
Mhm.
Orpah, who's like,
And do you find? I mean, I'll ask you this: do you find that that's like bad? Either one of them made the better choice. I think there's obviously like Ruth is a part of Jesus' lineage now,
Mhm.
but it's not like I feel like you can't blame Orpah for what she
No,
chose?
I don't. Because being put in that position, like, I don't know what I would choose, but I wouldn't put it past me to be like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but
I'm gonna
I got
get out.
permission to leave.
Because it's not like she's like, okay, as soon as your husband died, as soon as your kids
Yeah, she
died, I'm
was
like,
like,
I gotta go. Like,
I'm outta
no,
here, yeah.
she waited until Naomi herself was like, hey,
I
like,
can't offer you.
But
that.
Orpah also like sealed her fate by making that decision.
yeah.
Sealed her fate. What do you mean by that?
Like,
The Bible doesn't mention her past this. Really.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But
I
I,
know,
mean,
but like, as
she,
a Moabite, like,
Well, yeah, but she's. I mean, yeah, I get what you mean.
she could have, like, I feel like she had the opportunity to be the Ruth. Like, the book could have been Orpah.
or, like,
Oprah.
yeah.
But-
I understand what you mean.
Yeah. And then,
That's
So-
actually, okay, so we'll keep going, but that's actually something I would love to talk about. Just kind of though.
Do it now, 'cause if not, I'll forget.
I won't forget.
okay. So Ruth is, she's the one who's like, I'm gonna stay with you, or like, because Naomi says, return home. This is verse 11. Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons? Who could become your husbands? And I'm like, well, reading that, I was like, she's kind of right. Like, she is right.
Yeah,
But I'd be like, man, I still wouldn't want to leave her because I don't want to.
you
I
give her
don't
like a
want her
couple
to
days,
be.
and then you'd be like,
I don't want her to be alone.
yeah.
And then I'm trying to read. I'm gonna skip to verse 16.
Mhm.
But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. When you go, where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God."
that hit me so hard. I was like, oh my, it felt like a scene in a movie. Like,
I saw it happen.
yeah, like I don't know why when she said that, like, do not urge me to leave you, for where you will go, I will go. Where you will stay, I will stay. Where your God is basically my God. I was like, oh
I
my
think
gosh,
that's kind of where she declared like
her love, her loyalty.
her loyalty, and not just to Naomi, but to God, because it's like
And these
she
are-
could have been
Yeah.
like, okay, I will follow you, Naomi, because you're chill, you're cool, but I will follow my own God. Like,
Yeah.
I'll believe in my own
And
God.
that's
But
something
no,
that happened a lot.
Yeah.
And we see that in Genesis and everything, where people brought their own gods into Israel. Even the okay, never mind. I
Yeah.
get upset with the
so
Israelites.
it's just like, I don't know. I just think that it's so big for her to be like, your God is my God.
Mhm.
And I think some of that has to do with her seeing the goodness. Like, the way I imagine Naomi and her husband before he died was
the
like,
character. Of
yeah,
Naomi.
was telling them about like how stuff was in Israel, or like, yeah, when we lived in Israel, like this and this and this, and God did this and this and this.
Mhm.
Like, that's how I imagine it, because they had been living together for a while before everything
'Cause
happened.
it says 10 years. I believe,
Yeah. So it had to come up at some point. So
Mhm.
seeing the goodness that God has done in Israel for them before they left, I assume that Ruth is like, oh, like, I want that too
That's
for my
pretty
life.
sick, yeah.
Like, that's cool. Like, I look, you want that. So just, I don't know, just being able to be like, my God, your God is my God, and I will follow your God is huge, because not a lot of people now do that.
Yeah.
So
People get married and they're like,
and they're
I
like,
can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Mhm.
At this point, she leaves behind her parents. She leaves behind her life as a Moabite. She's like, okay, they're going to Bethlehem at this
Mhm.
point.
yeah. And then the next is where Naomi kind of throws her tantrum, and she's like, don't call me Naomi. This is verse 20.
Because what does Naomi mean?
Pleasant. It means
Pleasant.
pleasant. And
Yeah.
Mara means bitter. So they go into Bethlehem, and it's like, the way I see it is like coming back to church after a while, and everyone's like,
Where have you been?
where is that?
Where you been?
Is that
Loca?
Naomi?
Yes.
Like,
Where
oh
you
my
been,
gosh.
Luca?
And they're like all whispering among each other. Like, so they're walking, and then they're like, Naomi, you're back. And she's like, no.
Don't. But my thing is, she still went back. Like, if she was so bitter, and like, if she had turned her back
Like
completely
prideful, I get-
on
yeah.
God,
Mhm.
she would have been like, no, I'm not going back. I'll figure it out here in Moab.
Mhm.
But no, she was like, I'm gonna go back. Like, I think she still had that fear of God in her,
I think she
where
had
it
that.
was
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
I have to go back. Like, I'm not gonna be happy about it. It's kind of like a toddler when they're like, I don't want to eat my vegetables.
Yeah.
But they still eat them. Like, it's just like, you know who your God is. You know you need him.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
even in her pride of being like, don't call me Naomi. I'm no
I'm
longer
Mara.
Naomi. I imagine her with like the emo
yeah.
like haircut. She's like, I'm no longer Naomi. I am Mara.
You know,
And it's just like, I don't know. It's just,
She played Nirvana.
Yeah, it still just shows, because it happens now a lot with us. It's happened with me, where it's like we're still very much kids. Like we're still very much children of God, where we throw tantrums and we're like, I don't want
We like to blame God a lot for our stuff.
Yeah.
I know for me, oh man, I mean, it was a really big period of my life where, like, at least for me, it wasn't so much that I'm like blaming God, but it was like, why would you let this happen? It's like, why would you not take, okay, why am I responsible for what I did?
Literally. It's like, what do you mean I'm dealing with the consequences of my
actions?
actions? And it's like, I don't know, it happens a lot now. And like at every age period, because I know grown adults at like 30 who are like, why is God putting this on me? And like, and I remember I listened to a sermon one time that was like, instead of, well, it was, I think you've heard it, instead of asking God, why me? Ask him, how can this grow me, or how can this like make me bigger?
Keep going.
And I was like, I don't know. It's so interesting, because I'm like, it happens to us now, and I don't at all blame Naomi for acting how she's acting, because she's a kid. Like, she's a grown woman, but she's still a child in God's eyes. So she's a little bit entitled to throw her tantrum, because she's not God.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't know all the things that God knows.
And I feel like that's, I mean, yeah, you've already pointed out that that's just how we act.
Yeah. And that's just the human way of acting.
One thing that she said,
you go.
I was gonna say, one thing that she said, like after that, was, I went away full and the Lord has brought me back empty. I think when I first read that, I was like, I read that too many times and I don't know why. I was like, what does that mean? Like, she chose her path basically. And like, I know like a lot of things happened to her, but I think now I'm rereading it, she went away full with the Lord, like with the Lord's hope, and he had given her like so much faith, and he given her so much blessings despite the famine. And she went away against his will. And I think that God, I don't know if it's true, so this is all thoughts, but I think that God like did that to bring her back home, because that's the point of the lineage of how Jesus came.
Yeah, and we can talk about that a bit, because I think there's a lot of interesting thoughts about, like, okay, so as we go through this, I will point out something now, but God technically doesn't show up at all in the book of Ruth.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? Like, they talk about him a lot, and they talk about the laws and everything, but it's different from a lot of the other stories in the Bible, or a lot of the other things that happen in the Bible, where God is like, shows up, right?
And he gives direction.
He's like, here's what you do, here's what you don't do. Yeah. For lack of a better way of putting it, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Forgive me, Lord. But like that. And in the book of Ruth, he doesn't really do that. And I'll bring it up now, so that way we have to talk about it later.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, because that is interesting. And then switching it a little bit from Naomi to Ruth, like Ruth has made her choice, like she's going with Naomi.
Yeah.
But it still isn't an easy decision. First of all, you're a Moab. We all know, like,
The Israelites don't like the
Israelites
Moab.
don't like the Moabs. You're a Moab woman.
They're low-key racist, but yeah.
Yes.
Like, you're a Moab woman, and then you're going to this new place, to a new faith, to a new, like, you don't know anyone, you don't know anything.
And to make it work, she's a widow. So she's
Yeah,
not
she's
even,
a widow.
she's
She's
not
unmarried.
clean. Like,
And it's something, because I mean, the Torah has a lot of rules regarding a lot of stuff, and we'll see some of the rules later on as we go about Ruth. But it was like a woman who was, so the rule, at least in biblical times, was if someone died, if like the husband died, then the sibling would take him on, and then the moment that there's no one else to take on the woman, she's kind of like, oh, she's used up. Like,
yeah,
I don't know,
like there's nothing for her. And it's just, I don't know, it's just so interesting that she grew up as a Moab. She doesn't know any of, like, she's a new Christian, basically.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and she still follows Naomi with such faith that nothing like horrible is going to happen to her. Like, she's like, I'm just going to walk in blind. And I think that's a lot of people when they become new Christians or become new in the faith, where it's like, we're walking with so much faith and so much, like, I got this, like, God's got this, like, I'm not taking care of anything, I'm not trusting anything. At least that's how it was for me, where it's like, you have so much faith, you have so much trust in the Lord, where it's like anything could happen. Like, you're at the top of everything. And it's just like, as we go on, as we like live more in church, in our word, as we pray more, we're like, God,
Where you at?
literally. And it's just like,
I feel like that is very. That's a really good point, and I feel like even another point to that is like, at least when we see Ruth following that, because it's not called Naomi like the book, right?
yeah,
It's called Ruth, and I feel like a really big part of it is that Ruth followed Naomi. I don't know if that makes sense, and I feel like that's something that we struggle with now is that we follow God, but we kind of sometimes don't care for leadership in the sense of we're like, okay, we got God. That's all I have to answer to. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter who else is in charge.
yeah, it's like, I don't
And
follow
I
the
mean, and there's a
rules.
lot of stuff that goes into that, like Naomi making a bad decision initially and leaving Israel, right? That's a bad decision, but doesn't necessarily mean that whenever she's leading Ruth means that she's like, okay, I'm not gonna tell you what I did.
Yeah. And it's still like going back to Naomi, she made a bad decision, but God is still using her to bring someone new into his kingdom. And it's so, I don't know, it's so interesting because it's like Naomi's on the side, like legit throwing her tantrum, being like,
she's kicking,
but she's still in one way or another guiding Ruth to this faith or to this walk with God. And it's like, even, and I don't think Naomi's trying to, like, being so honest with you, I think Naomi's very worried about like herself now, and like, God, you're leaving me and I have nothing. But even in that time, Naomi's not seeing that God is using her. And it happens to us, like, I think in RCYA, because that's the ministry I'm in. I don't know about the other ones, but I know
media.
Yeah. But it happens to us where it's like, we'll be throwing our tantrums or we'll be so focused on ourselves that we don't even realize how God is using us to lead other people. And I think it's happened to me, like, for example, I remember a time where I was very focused on myself and like what was going on in my life. And I came to work and my coworker, Tony, was like, hey, I was thinking if we like prayed for the kids before we started the day, like just so that we start the day right, because I know that you believe in that. And I wasn't even trying to be like, let's get the Bible out, we're reading Genesis 1. Like, no, like I was going through my own thing. I'm like praying, I'm like, God, what are you doing? I'm like, God, what's going on? And even in that moment, he still used me to be able to bring this person closer to something that she really doesn't know a lot about. And like even the choice of like, let's pray, because
like she's even the one initiating it,
not
you.
And like being able to see that, like for her to understand or see that prayer works and prayer is important and prayer is a part of my life without me even trying, I feel like is just like, that's so cool. He can use us without us even.
That is so good. I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's like the thing I was telling you about with editing, where it's like you see yourself and you're like, I want to cut myself out of everything.
Yeah.
And you don't like, I would say, and this is just allegory I'm using, where it's like you don't like the way you look, you don't like the way you do things. But whenever someone else is looking at you, they don't see that as the sense of like, not your flaws, because your flaws are prevalent. That's part of being human as well. You see, but they see the good as well. They see when they hear your voice, they don't think it's annoying.
They're like, because you're your biggest
your biggest op.
Yeah.
Critic,
like you're your biggest critic. Like you're always gonna be like, I did this and this and this and this and this wrong. But when other people are looking at you, they're not seeing, like, yeah, maybe they see like
they don't see
flaws,
that as something that disqualifies you.
They see
like,
other stuff.
And you're still Christian.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's so cool because even in your friendships, it's just like they see you and they see the stuff that you struggle with and they still choose to be near you. And I think if anything, that shows like even how God loves us, because he sees every mistake we have ever made and he still chooses to be by our side. He still chooses to push us towards him. He sees still, like, I feel like obviously God is my biggest supporter, but I feel it the most when I make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like not when I'm already on doing the right thing. When I've made my mistakes and I'm like, oh, like I feel horrible about myself and I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. God's the first one to be like, okay, well, let's get up and let's make it right. And it's like, that's so cool to me. Because it's like, even with Ruth right now, turning it back to Ruth, it's like, she doesn't know what she's doing. And she's still following. Like, she's probably like, I'm following this thing, but I don't know what it is. Like, it's God. And even with Naomi, with her making her mistake, God is still with her. God is still And like you said, God doesn't show up like in this book, but he's still there.
Yes.
And it's so, I don't know. It's so cool.
Yeah. Do you guys want to move on to 2, or do you have anything to say?
No, I'm sorry. I just can't stop blushing. 'Cause you were saying about like how you see how we all see our worst selves, and then how like you guys don't see that when you see a friend or whatever. And I'm like, are they talking about me right now?
Yes, girl, I'm talking about you. You're my friend.
No, I see the bad part. Nah,
You're so annoying.
Okay.
It's gonna cut, and it's gonna be like us in completely different
spots.
Literally.
Well, more than likely, it's gonna cut to me. I've actually had to do that where I cut to myself and then I cut back to them because it's like they're moved.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hopefully it's not too noticeable.
No, this is definitely.
Or I'll go to
We'll
wide.
be like, we
We were
moved.
sitting like this close, and now we're like this.
I'll probably go to wide and then go to y'all, so that way
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
like it just disorientates them with the wider shot where it's like, have they always been sitting like that? Ruth chapter 2.
Ruth meets Boaz.
Yeah. So.
I was gonna burp, but you're good.
Burp. No, go ahead.
No,
I'll
I
give
can't.
a
It's
minute.
stuff. Go for it.
So in Ruth 2, Naomi, we found out that Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, and it just says a relative. So
Yeah,
I was very confused as to like a cousin or like whatever. Because never mind. Because I was like, how does it connect?
It's because a lot of the families are, once you're married, or there's an old, I can't remember what it's called, but it kind of talks about the way like even that Jesus reacts to us is like when you join a family, everything about your past is washed away.
Yeah.
As in you are now like your lineage is theirs. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, where honestly, apart from the records that we do have that it talks about, there's not really much like
it doesn't
how
really
exactly
like
are they
matter.
related.
Yeah.
They're like 20th cousins or something like that?
Yeah.
They're related like the way I say I'm related to Melanie.
Yeah.
Where it's like someone's
like,
married to someone else who
who's
has a
married
kid.
to someone who has a kid who has married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that.
No, I get it. So yeah, in verse 2, I'm gonna read it because I really like this verse. And it goes, and Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. Naomi said to her, go ahead, my daughter. And then 3 goes, so she went out, entered a field, began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. So with verse 2, what I like about Ruth in this is that she took initiative.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
She like, and it's so, and not that it's hard to see in women in the Bible, because a lot of the women in the Bible take initiative, and I think that's what sets them apart from a lot of women in those times, because taking initiative was unheard of for a woman. And for her to be, it's just her and Naomi in this like hut, I imagine, because they have nowhere to live. For her to be like, I'm gonna go out and work is so like unheard of in that time. It's just like so cool. She's like, I'm gonna put in the work so that we can get.
It's not even like to get paid. Like she's going to pick up their scraps. That you know how humbling that is.
Yes.
As a woman in going to a foreign land where nobody likes you because you're a Moabite, and you're picking up after them, and that's if you can get anything like that. Man, I would cry. Like it doesn't even show Ruth crying at all in the entire time that she's moved. And I was like, dang,
I would be sobbing the whole time.
She is strong.
Yeah. And the fact that it's also putting herself in danger because she's a Moabite woman, because she's a woman, period. And she has like no record, essentially. Like if something were to happen to her,
no one's gonna care.
No one's gonna care. No one's gonna ask.
Her,
But putting herself in that position, anything could happen to her. Any man could come and just take her. And she just is still willing to put herself at risk in a new place.
And men are, I'm pretty sure, like
it literally says that later on, where it's like
the men do that, right?
They don't do that, but not to her. But they talk about, or at least Boaz, or we can. Well, let's keep moving forward because we will literally get to that part next.
So then,
yeah.
Another thing in verse 3 that I read, it was more like the fact that she is on Boaz's field is not a coincidence.
No,
it's not like a flip a coin like any
out of all
anyone's
the fields.
out of all the fields she landed on Boaz. No, it is the fact that God has placed her,
Yeah.
which is another thing. Like you said, God doesn't show up in this whole thing, but in the same way, he kind of does. Because like the Bible doesn't say God put her there. It says
God was like, go here.
Yeah. It's just kind of like by coincidence, which is a lot. I relate this verse how our life works now, because I feel like we don't have many burning bushes happening where it's like God being like, do this, this, and this, and then go do this, this, and this. Like God is a gentleman. He's allowing us to just like make our own decisions, but also guiding us in a way where we by coincidence end up in the places that we end up in.
That's something like I want to talk about, and I'm going to wait till the end because I feel like it's a really big discussion. It's just kind of the idea of free will versus predetermination. Right? Because I feel like this is a really big like chapter where it like just shows off God's masterful planning, you know?
Yeah, and it'll tie in with everything. Yeah, so it's just like I just think it's so cool that like I said, Ruth is walking blindly and God is still guiding her to somehow end up on Boaz's field. It's just so cool. And it's just like puts me in awe of God and his plan, because it's like he knows what he's doing, but in times like this, it's like he does know what he's doing, because look where he put her. So I don't know. That's super cool.
Yeah.
And this is whenever she's already on the land, like picking the grains or like the barley left behind, and that's when Boaz spots her, and he's like, "Who is this woman?" And I'm like, "Oh, I see." Like the way I see it is like in a crowded room, right? And you see that light on the girl. You see, and then they're like, "Oh, that's
The clouds kind of form up and they make a spotlight.
Yeah,
it's like the little rom-comming that I was talking about at the beginning. Like this is the scene where
it's like even though Jacoby doesn't like it, it's like love at first sight.
I think
from a biblical point, even here, I don't think it's like that same.
I think it's definitely attraction or like.
Yeah, I think attraction.
Boaz is just a gentleman.
But that's what I mean.
I don't think he sees it as
that's
love.
even the part of it. I think because I've talked about this before, where it's like you can find someone attractive and one, not tell them, and two, not be like, okay, well, I'm trying to get with you now that I find you attractive.
And then the way that he does it, because I do think he can be a gentleman and find her attractive in a way where he's like, or
he's a good
even
example of what
attractive in the sense not just to her looks, but what she's doing or how she's doing it, or that light that God
or
puts
even
in
the
us.
fact that he knows that it's not someone part of his women.
Yeah,
like
it's
part
just
of the
like it piques his interest.
I think that he was intrigued by her qualities of what she formed. Yeah, not her. I don't think he was drawn by her. Not that she wasn't beautiful. No, I imagined her being so beautiful, and
that she just. I think I was when in my research with it was describing that she does possess a lot of the qualities of Proverbs 31.
Yes, oh my gosh, when I was reading about her, and I was like, man, like Ruth is brave to like go from one world to another part. She's very loyal. She's very strong, very I don't want to say stubborn, because she's not stubborn, but like stubborn but in a good way.
I know what you mean. I don't know what the word is.
And I was like, she was just doing so much, and I was like, this girl is so like, that's like, I was reading, I was like, man, this is the kind of love I want, because when I was first reading when I was telling Jay this, when I was first reading Ruth, I was like, why does everyone want a Ruth and Boaz kind of love? I was like, this guy's old. And like, it's just not like, why do you want that? But that was when I first read it, like a year and a half ago. And I reread it and I was like, man, I want this kind of love. Like the way he treats her as we get on, like you'll see what a gentleman he is and how generous he is towards the family. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
it's
because he's a very generous man. He is. Like those are the qualities of him, and I don't know. I'm impressed.
I think I'll keep reading because I can say a lot about Boaz. So it goes to their first interaction, which I think is I just had it. Verse 6.
Oh well, yeah.
Oh,
verse 6 is whenever. Verse 5 to 7 is when Boaz sees her and he's like, "Who's that girl?"
Yeah.
And then she like
they're like,
and then 7 is when she talks to him for the first time, right? Yeah. Okay. So she said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter." So first of all, having to being able to beg, I struggle with being prideful sometimes, and it's something that I've gotten better in. But having to beg a man to please let me just have your scraps.
Mhm.
It's just something so like, especially, and I think it's a lot because of how women are raised now compared to how women are raised then.
Yeah.
Because
And I
women
don't
are
think it's
raised
necessarily
now.
bad, but yeah, I get what you
Yeah, because women are raised
It's
now.
a different culture.
A lot like
Independent.
Mhm.
independent.
You don't need no man.
Girl boss.
Yeah, and like even in the times where it's like a lot of women don't have fathers that were there for them,
Mhm.
it's just like you have to, and this is something I say a lot. It's like you have to fight more, or like you have to work harder to get to a position where a man maybe doesn't have to work as hard
Mhm.
because of the privileges that they
So
have.
it's like we split 50-50 in this household.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
Yeah. It's more like, I think
Why are you
it's
looking
just,
at me
it's more like being able to not have that pride. And I know that in these times are different, but there's still a lot of women probably who are prideful, just like we are now.
Mhm.
And it just being able to understand your position, understand where you're at, and be like, this is something that I have to do. And I'm sure it wasn't comfortable for Ruth to be like, please let me get your scraps. But she still did it. And I think that shows a lot about
Also,
her
she did
character.
it not just for her, but she also did it for Naomi.
Yes.
Because Naomi's like she's an elder. Like she's not able to go to the fields and pick out in the burning sun for hours long just to get like the littlest of things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And it's
And
just
that's
like,
why even like later on, whenever she comes back, Naomi's like, dang.
I know.
It's just like she's so selfless. And we see that in her character before she has like,
Before she even meets Boaz.
yeah. And she's just, I don't know, she's of course like she's a woman that I look up to in the Bible because it's like something I want to reach. It's like I want to be selfless. I want to be loyal. I want all these traits that may be more difficult now or difficult now to do, but it's still something that I would strive to.
Yeah.
You know? Because I think a lot of people want a Boaz, but I'm like, a lot of men would want a Ruth.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I
Because-
mean, that's true in any sense. Or sorry, the part that I'm trying to get to is more, it's that thing where it's like, you want a Boaz, but you're not willing to be a Ruth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
And
it's
same
like-
thing vice versa, where it's like, you want a woman to be submissive, but you're also not kind.
Yeah.
You're not
And
caring.
even like later, I think it's in 3 where, no, it's not in 3. It's in like 4 where Boaz takes initiative to get her.
Yes.
Which
We'll
we'll
talk
talk
about
about
that
it
later. We'll talk about that
I'm
later.
like getting ahead of myself.
So verse 8 is where we were talking about where Boaz tells Ruth, hey, don't go off to another field. And then he also kind of talks about, he's like, I've warned the young men not to treat you roughly.
Oh, he's like
And,
a
all that.
protector.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like even that is him taking initiative.
Mhm.
Because he could have been like, oh, okay, you're
You're a
new here.
woman.
Like,
And especially
you're
this part
a
where she's
Moabite
like,
woman.
yeah.
L, like, get out
And
of here.
she's like, what have I deserved to, what have I done to deserve this kindness? I am only a foreigner. And Boaz is just like, well, I know who you are, or regardless of like whether or not you're a foreigner, you're still you're part of my family.
yeah.
More or less, as though.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
in some way.
Mhm.
And it's just, I
And then he
just
blesses
think
her. Yeah.
it's so cool where, like, because he could have just been like, yeah, you can keep working here
Mhm.
and not told. He went that extra mile to be like, don't.
Yeah.
Harm
Stay
her.
here. 'Cause-
Protect her.
And then he
Like-
went.
Go ahead.
There you go.
Where it's like he's protecting her. He's like, don't lay a hand on her, like she's under my protection,
Mhm.
which is like cool.
Yeah, and then he went that extra mile,
It's like, cool,
and he
yeah.
told the other men, he's like, when you pick up the fields, like drop some on purpose, but don't let her see.
Oh
it.
yeah, I
That
thought
part
that was
made
really
me- I was like, oh my
I thought that was a
gosh.
little funny because I'm like, dang.
He's like, but
I
know
get
the heart that he's
because
doing
I
it
agree
with.
that like he's doing a good job of it where he's like, not like that whole make her feel like she worked for it, but like he's still trying to help her out, but
Yeah.
he doesn't want.
She doesn't want to. She doesn't want a handout.
He doesn't want to make it seem like he's giving her charity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. One, probably because I don't even think she would accept
She
it.
wouldn't.
Yeah, she
I don't
wouldn't.
think
And
she's like
actually-
humble and she.
Mhm.
she
Something
wants-
I was reading about in some of the research is that one of the things that Boaz was doing is following the law of the Torah, which I feel like it's a law where it says be generous to the foreigner or be kind to the foreigner.
Yeah,
Mhm.
to the poor and the needy.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that like I feel like I don't know that doesn't even happen a lot in I would say the Old Testament because a lot of the times it's like well yes God is directing them not to like necessarily have interactions with them as much
Mm-hmm.
whenever they do interact, a lot of times they're like, I hate you.
It's literally full on hatred.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like,
It's just
they go crazy.
this, like, I don't know, it's the heart of Boaz,
Mhm.
which is when you hear like, I want a Boaz, I see it more as like, I want someone to provide and protect me. I want
Mhm.
someone to help me out when I'm trying my hardest, which is what he's doing for her.
Yeah.
And it's so like, it's so encouraging, like as a woman, because it's just like, there's a Boaz out there
Mhm.
who's like,
Sorry,
Yeah.
your
being
watch
there
went
to
off.
protect you and being there to, what were you gonna say?
It's because my watch just went off to say stand up, and yours
My watch
did
just
too. Yeah.
yeah. But it's just like, yeah, it's so it's so cool that this, and I think even in this, because God knows everything, he knew that we would be reading this. He knew that women around the world would be reading Ruth and be like, oh my gosh, like
Mhm.
it's just so cool that God is teaching us through this story,
Mhm.
or is like directing us, like, this is what you should look for, or these are
Mhm.
qualities that are good in a man, because
It's true.
And it's like he's also not just taking care of Ruth again. Like he's taking care of Naomi. We'll see that later on
Uh-huh.
of what he does for Naomi, which makes my heart like jump a beat. But like as when you look for someone like a Boaz, you want someone that, as you said, like protects you and provides. But you also want someone that like takes care of your family as well. Like someone who treats your family as if I've always wanted someone that dates. If you're dating me, you're also with my family. We're a
Yeah.
package deal.
Yeah.
So you get me flowers.
You get
You
my
get-
fam-
You get my
my
family
mom.
flowers.
You better get my dad a bouquet
Yeah, that's-
of roses.
So you see that with Boaz when later on with Naomi, which we'll read. I don't want to jump ahead. But
Yeah.
he's just so generous and
He
so
is
kind.
He's so cool, and so is Ruth. And I just think I have written down here where it's like, I lost the word that I was gonna say, but when a woman, or at least now, I feel like a lot of women are like, oh, I want to be with like a trad wife, where it's like, I want to be a traditional, like, I want to
Oh,
stay
yeah,
at home.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to do like, but what I'm seeing here is that Ruth was already working, and not for Boaz. She was working, and she was putting in that work for what she needed to take care of. She was
Mhm.
taking initiative, like I said,
Yeah.
of the things that she needed. She
She's
wasn't
handling her
expecting.
stuff,
Yeah, she wasn't expecting a handout. She wasn't expecting someone to come and do it for her.
She's like, I don't need a man to give me a handout, but
But since you're here,
Yeah.
like, no, it's just so cool that she was willing to, because I see that in myself a bit, where it's like, I tend to have that trait where I'll work hard and hard and hard. And when it is time for a man to come into my life and be like, hey, I'm going to help you with this, it's a lot harder for me to be like, to let go of the reins.
Yeah.
So it's so cool to see that Ruth, when Boaz, because she could have been like, no, I'm good.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want it. Like, I don't need it. Or like have that pride where it's like, I'm good on my own. Like, I don't need your help.
yeah.
But her being able to let go of that, like, I don't know, to let go of that need to take care of herself, or that I've got it on my own, is
pride, but yeah,
is
that's
so-
the easiest, that's the word for it.
yeah. It's so cool. And that's another thing. That's why I highlighted 13.
What is it? Read it.
May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my lord, she said. You have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servants.
And this is where Boaz is like, hey, come eat, get your food. And then he's like, just eat whatever you want.
Yeah, he's just like, you're.
And it's that part where she's not in a position of like, she's in a position where she's humbling herself, where she's like, yeah, I'll take the food.
She's like, yeah,
She's
I
like,
will.
I don't-
Thank you. Appreciate it.
uh-huh.
And it's like, again, like, she doesn't have that pride.
And even we see it later on whenever she comes back to Naomi. She, not that she like stole the food, but she's like, she ate her fill and then she like took the rest with her because she's like, I'm gonna save this for my mom.
I
No, and it says here that she was satisfied. She didn't she didn't overeat.
She didn't overindulge,
She just
yeah.
got enough to the point where she was like, okay, and then
So,
she took the rest left over.
Mhm.
And then it's even, and like I said, Ruth is short. This is just one chapter. And
Mhm.
being able to see all of this
Qualities
of not just Ruth, but also Boaz is
Mhm.
just so cool, because it is short. It's a
Mhm.
short book. And yet there's so much, like,
It's like when they get that love story in a movie instead of like in a
yeah,
10 season long show.
Yeah,
Like
it's
Friends,
just so,
Max-
I love it. And then I think it might be the end of,
So yeah. Oh, and
Unless
we
I
already kind
skipped
of talked
something?
about the other part of it where, what's his name? Boaz is like, okay, now drop the stuff.
Yeah.
It's like let's help her out. Just don't make it obvious.
Yeah.
And he's like, you see that? Just
Just
I gotta, man. Oh, where's? Oh yeah, here, chapter 16, where he's like, pull some heads of barleys from the bundles and drop them on purpose for her. Let her pick them up and don't give her a hard time.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, I don't know, in my imagination, it's like the way he's directing. He's like, okay, so when you're doing it, like grab it, pull it out, and then be like, oops.
And I imagine Ruth being like, "Oh my gosh, like,
She's like,
there's so much
dang.
stuff here."
Like, are they?
The Lord is, I mean, which he was, but yeah.
Yeah, it's
Through
just
Boaz.
like, yeah, it's funny.
And then that's when we come to the end where she goes back home to Naomi and she's like, and Naomi, that part where she's like, dang,
Yeah.
you got that
lot. What
it's
did
like
you
from
do?
1 day's of work. And then
And-
she kind of explains like, oh, I met Boaz. And she's like, oh, I know Boaz.
She's like, don't leave him.
Boaz.
She's like, stay by his
She's like, that
side.
makes sense.
And that
Yeah.
gives her that reassurance.
Yeah.
Of, like, even if she had just listened to Boaz and she's like, maybe this isn't somebody that I can trust. After all that, I don't know how she would, but still.
Yeah.
And then she went home. It gives that reassurance of like, yeah, he is someone.
And
that you
I
can
feel like
trust.
you don't, I'll say this in just a broad term. It's like, even if you don't feel like, if she never felt like, I can't trust Ruth in any, like she's like, I trust Ruth, but it still helps to have reassurance. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So even if it never falters, it's like whenever, never mind, because we're not married, but it's like whenever you are in a marriage, at least the way it should be, is like your thought of your husband or your wife shouldn't ever be like, oh, I don't trust them. It should be, I trust them and I love them. And then they come home with flowers and you're like, oh, that's so sweet. Like a reassurance of it, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like we kind of see that in, I don't know. Is this a story about how we should treat our mother-in-laws whenever we get to that?
Yet. No.
I already
it's
planned on treating her like this.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's just, that was chapter 2. I think we went through everything.
Yeah, it ends off on Ruth.
Yeah, it says
Naomi.
Ruth. Naomi tells Ruth, just stay there because
Yeah.
that's good.
And then we go into 3.
chapter 3.
Yes.
So chapter 3, what happened in chapter 3?
This is
Chapter 3.
okay. So
Oh my
this is
God.
whenever
He's gonna be a
Ruth and
toss it.
We'll start over.
Yeah.
chap.
Yeah, just do that. You can't see it over there.
Oh.
Hey. Okay.
Let's start over.
Oh, stop sneezing.
Okay, chapter 3. It's whenever Ruth sneaks
Oh my
into
gosh.
Boaz's place because Naomi says so.
Yeah.
Because Naomi said so.
Yeah.
Let's
So-
provide some context.
Let's dive into that. So it starts off with Naomi. Basically, the way I imagined it is like Naomi comes into the room and she's like, I have something to tell you. Or she's just like I just thought of the biggest plan like ever. Like
To
this is
secure
how
our
it's gonna
future.
go down. Because in verse 1, or not verse 1, sorry. In verse 1 of 3. She goes, one day Ruth's mother and
Sorry.
oh my
I
goodness.
clicked on
Are you not listening?
something and there
Can
was
you
an
not?
ad. I'm
you
sorry.
not listening?
So verse 1, before I was rudely interrupted. One day Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, my daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. And then she goes in verse 2, now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing, right? That's right, winnowing?
Yeah.
Winnowing barley on the threshings. I lost my spot. Hold on, I'm dyslexic.
Tonight he will be winnowing barley at the threshing floor.
Thank you.
Now verse 3.
Yeah. Can you read it?
Okay, yeah. Now do as I tell you. Take a bath and put on perfume and dress in your nicest clothes. Then go to the threshing floor. But don't let Boaz see you until he's finished eating and drinking. Be sure to notice where he lies down. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. He will tell you what to do.
So this plan, when I first read it, the first time I read Ruth, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what's
Naomi
going
just-
on?
I thought she was gonna try to seduce him. I was like, what
I
is
know.
happening?
That is what it seemed like. And I was like, but with feet?
I was like, because while I was reading it the
fetish have been
first
around
time,
for a
I was
while.
like, this looks like seduction, but with a foot fetish.
That's literally okay. So actually, I mean, we'll get to that. But later on, whenever Boaz is like, okay, now get out of here, because I think a part of it is like in his mind he sees it as like they're gonna think we were like sleeping together if they see you come out of
So
here.
because I read the plan and I'm like, Naomi, this isn't your best.
I
Like,
know.
this isn't like.
And I
don't know.
think because I should have read more on this, it just didn't cross my mind
Yeah.
until we were like talking about getting to this part.
Yeah.
Is like I know that there's a bit of like symbolism in the Bible when it comes to gumming to someone's feet, right? I think in the middle of the night is a little weird, but like we see it whenever we bow our heads and you bow before a king, or whenever you prostrate yourself across the floor because
you kiss their feet when you bow.
It's
Yeah.
like, or like it's a position of humbleness before someone great. You get what I mean? So I think I'm pretty sure that is kind of the intention of what. Also, keep in mind, Boaz is not a kind of like us. Boaz is not a part of this culture, so she's just like, okay, I'll do what you said because that's
You mean Ruth?
Ruth, yeah, sorry.
Boaz.
Ruth is not a part of the culture.
She's like, okay.
She's a Moab.
Like, if that's what you're into,
she's
I
like, so
guess.
that's what y'all do, okay?
I know, and it's because in the next verse she's literally like, yeah, okay, like sure, and like, if anything, like being new and everything that I've gone through, if I was Ruth, and then you tell me to do this weird plan, I'd be like, this might be where I cross the line. This might be where I'm like,
Be a little too much.
hold on, like what's happening? But no, she was like, I will do whatever you say.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next few verses is her actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And
she waits for Boaz to do. She does. She pretty much follows what.
yeah, she
Ruth
follows
said.
the entire
What
plan.
Naomi said, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, she follows the entire plan. And then in
then-
verse 9, Boaz is
Actually, verse 8 is whatever.
Is it?
It says around
Yeah. Oh,
midnight,
yeah.
Boaz suddenly woke up and turned over, and he's like, he was surprised to find a woman light at his feet.
because anyone would be.
I agreed with that.
He's like,
Yeah.
who are you?
He
I was
really
reading
is.
this. I was
Who
reading
are
this last
you?
night in bed. I was like, "Oh my gosh, someone at my feet!" Like I'm trying to imagine in
I'd
my.
kick
their
that
feet.
guy's
I was like, no.
I'm like, get out of here.
No, I'd flip out.
I would kick them. Like it's already by my feet. I
Just
would
bah.
scream and kick.
Yeah.
No, honestly. The only thing I imagined was like my dog. Sometimes he sleeps by my feet, and I don't like it. I just
Mhm.
move him.
You're like, never mind. I was
I'm like,
say something.
ew,
He's
ew.
like, does your dog not do that? Toto does that to me sometimes.
No,
I'll be
Milo does
barefoot
it,
and
but
he'll
Rocky's normal.
Rocky, wait. Milo's
Rocky's
a
the
freak?
big one.
Milo's
the
freak?
tiny
Yeah, I
one.
know.
Yeah.
Well, Milo can only reach so much. He's like, it's there.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
So Boaz is like, who are you? And Ruth is like,
like,
I am your servant, Ruth.
I'm Ruth.
And then she says,
Oh, okay. Sorry. Is this the first time that they mentioned the family redeemer?
Yeah.
yes, I was
Okay.
waiting to get to this part.
Okay, so it says in verse
9.
9, who are you? I'm your servant Ruth. Spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer. Do you guys want to talk a bit about, or do y'all know
Yes.
what a family redeemer is?
I think I wrote it down.
Okay, go for it.
I wrote down guardian redeemer is a close male relative who helps a family member in need.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was in those old times and I was married to someone, my husband dies, his brother would take me. And if
Yeah.
his brother dies, then my guardian redeemer would, or no one would,
Yeah.
and I would suffer.
Pretty much. So yeah. So in the context of, well, the whole story, but also just the traditions of the time, is that a guardian redeemer is, like you were saying, he's the man. Like he's a respectable man in the family, right? And pretty much there's a few ways that he can redeem someone, but the main way is he's basically purchasing land, right?
Mhm.
So it's like if you are a widower, you technically have no ownership over the land that your husband had.
Mhm.
So in order to keep it, pretty much the family redeemer would buy the land.
Yeah.
Now another part of that, and that is what happens here, is that he can also marry you in order to like complete that covenant of like, hey,
Can or has to?
I don't. In my research, it seemed like
think
it
it's
can.
has to.
I don't know if it was has
Because
to.
at least later, Boaz
At least I think
says
it. I think it varies. I think it depends on the situation because it wasn't like it was Boaz that he had to marry. It wasn't Naomi.
For Boaz, it was has to, I think, because
Mhm.
they needed to have
Yeah.
children.
And I think Naomi, if it wasn't just Naomi,
It
he
wouldn't be.
because he never. Because even when he explains it to Homeboy, I don't remember what his name is. He's not like, oh, you got to marry Naomi.
Yeah.
He's just like,
It's just like,
Yeah. So I don't know, but also traditions. I'll put a list of like what I think here.
I'll put a list. Just
Yeah.
And then in my study Bible it says, "We have a guardian redeemer in Jesus Christ, who though he was God, came to earth as a man in order to save us. His death on the cross has redeemed us from sin and hopelessness, and thereby purchased us to be his own possession. This guarantees our eternal inheritance." So we were talking about this earlier where you were asking us, like, how does this connect to Jesus? And we were like, but no, like, it says it in my study Bible. Okay, I might have not read it because I highlighted everything above it, and then I was like, this is like, good.
All of this, and then you're like,
I just hadn't read it. But yeah, it's just how Jesus is our guardian redeemer, and I think that helps me put in perspective what Boaz is to Ruth now. Also, another thing, the fact that, like, because now she was at his feet, he has to be the redeemer. I was like, that's kind of weird because he can't say no, or what?
No, you can't say no. He was already the redeemer because he was a close relative. But he said, like, later on he'll say
it was because I think he talks about, like, he's like impressed by her boldness, right?
Yeah.
Because he's like, whoa, you asked.
Well, in that moment, it's kind of like she's proposing to him, basically.
Yeah. Like, pretty much one of the conditions is we're going to get married. And he's like, I mean, I'm down, but like.
But he's like, I'm down, but there's someone who is closer.
Even that in his respectfulness of like following the rules is where he's like, I will ask, like I am down. He says that too. He's like, if he says no, I'm 100% down to marry you.
I have another thing highlighted where it was like, he was overcome knowing that she could have chosen someone else, someone richer or younger, and not followed Israelite custom. From this start, they developed an unselfish love and a deep respect for each other.
Yeah, because Boaz is old and Naomi is beautiful and young. And so she could essentially have any, well, going back to any Moabite, but she could also have any Israelite too.
She has options. My girl has options. But like it's like Boaz says, she chose him.
I don't even think he thought he had a shot with her.
I don't think so either.
Because the way like he's like going, like, you don't.
Whoa!
He's like, you were thinking of me?
I know.
What?
Yes, your kind dorky self.
It feels like a he falls first,
but she falls harder.
Yes. That's exactly how I thought of it, at least. Because I was like, I don't know. He just fell.
Because for me, do you think Naomi do you think Ruth knew that she was proposing to him, basically?
Probably not.
That's what I mean.
I'm like, she's like, hold on, what?
She's like, what? She's like, I don't know what we're doing, but I'm gonna do it.
No, she's a smart girl.
But I think she had to know because going back to the beginning part, whenever Naomi says, like, we're gonna find you a home, and like there's there's a certain
like enough implications that like even if she didn't spell it out for her, she would have been like, I get.
Well, they also in the Bible it says a permanent home, so it indicates that like marriage is permanent back in. I mean, like there was no such thing as divorce then, you know?
Yeah.
There was, but not.
It wasn't like common.
Wasn't common.
Yeah, she's a smart girl.
It was frowned upon way more than it is now. Now it seems too common. Yeah, but go on.
Then I have another thing highlighted for verse 6. This is what our study Bible says. It says, why was Ruth so willing to follow Naomi's instructions? She knew that she could trust Naomi, and she also knew how godly and kind Boaz was from the first day she met him. She had witnessed his love for the Lord, his obedience to God's law, his kindness, his respect toward women, his empathy for the poor, and his generosity. There are some of the characteristics that matter most when considering a relationship, whether seeking a spouse, a mentor, or a best friend. And I found that so cute. It's just like, yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that she noticed from Boaz was probably the love that he had for God, even though he hadn't really brought up God at all.
Just kind of, what is it? That's actually something I did want to talk about. Kind of like, at least when I was reading it, a big thing that kind of stuck out to me and I mean this more in like the generalization, is when people come to church, right?
Mhm.
It's like you can say you love God and you can say you're redeemed, you can say you're a Christian, and I'm speaking in generalized terms here, but like the way you know it, the way you believe someone, I would say, is when you see it in their life,
Yeah.
right? It's like there's no way, and apart from like straight up asking which one is impolite, but yeah,
Yeah.
kind of like being like, okay, one, I can take your. Oh, actually, that's what it was. It's because I was also, it was reflecting on kind of like how you, what is it called? Like evangelize to someone, where it's like, at least for me, one of the big things that I feel like I can't do, even though I know there is reason to do it, is that a lot of the times I feel like I can't evangelize to someone unless I have at least some kind of relationship with them, whether it's just passing friendship or friendship in general.
Yeah.
Just because I'm like, what if I can tell you all these things about God, but you have never seen it yourself? But let's say, or like what you were saying with your coworker, where it's like, but you've seen me and you know me. So whenever I speak about God, you can reference it to how I live my life. Right?
Yeah. And it just goes like a lot of people will come to church and they'll be like, I believe in Jesus. Like, and they're up there and they're worshiping and they're doing a great job. And then they're like, do you want to go drink later? Like shots? And I'm like, I thought you were just worshiping and like saying all these things. And it's just not even with something like drinking or smoking, but just something as like you're comfortable with fibs or lying.
Or even like what jokes they make or words they speak.
Yeah, jokes are a big thing where it's like what you joke about.
Are you joking? Are you actually joking?
Or like,
is that an okay?
It's like that guy you said. What's his name?
Chevy Chase from Community.
Yes.
Yeah, where it's like, are you joking or are you
being
actually for real? It's just like,
like
that. Like I
racist,
think we all struggle with that, at least in a sense. And I'm not saying this as like you're doing wrong. I say this more as like in my life and in the friendships that I have made, I can see where it's like we all struggle with having a clear perception of the way that we want to be seen, or having a clear way of being like, I'm a Christian and this is all the things I do that prove that I'm a Christian. But then we all have flaws. We're all human. So it's like, here's all the things that prove we're not that we're not a Christian, but we're not as strong as a believer as we'd say that we are. Because I think everyone,
because that's pride. I mean, and
I think that's with everyone. We'd all be like, yeah, I believe in Jesus.
Especially when we first get into, I would say even, and just from our experience with the internship, 2025 internship,
2025.
Like with the internship, because I feel like we all come off, I say a high, and that's the best way I can put it, is like we're on this Jesus high, because like, and that comes from a lot of things. The main thing being that, one, we've been secluded from the outside world, meaning that we're not, we take in so much information like throughout the day. So we spend 6 weeks away from all that, and we're just pursuing God during those 6 weeks. And whenever we come back to it, as much as we want to keep it in. And I think we do a good job of like, especially because that's why we make bonds during the internship, is that it helps us, what's it called? Like reinforce like, hey, are you still praying? Are you still reading your Bible every morning?
Keeping each other
accountable for stuff. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, is that like, I would say even with my experiences, like after a while, you just, not that you drop the ball, but like, you're
bound to like,
you're also in a different position than you were.
Yeah, there's other things influencing you than there are in the internship. And I think we do leave the internship with such a high where it puts us on this pedestal where it's like, we're up here. Like, we did 6 weeks of the internship, so I know what I'm talking about. When the reality is we know nothing at all until we are shoved in the world and we have to put what we learn in the 6 weeks into our daily lives, which is what makes it so hard. And I think it was much easier for me, at least, to be like judgmental about other people when I got out of the internship, where I was like, you're doing this?
You're a sinner?
You're sinning right now?
As if,
I could never.
As if we didn't do that 6 weeks ago.
Like, literally, like as if 6 weeks ago we were on the same thing. And it's just like, that's when it comes in. I feel like I can't speak for every intern, but I can speak for myself. And Sammy, you can add to this if you want. And you too, Jacoby. Where it's like, God, after the internship, will humble you. to such an extent where it's like,
Oh.
he's like, oh, you think you're on top of the world right now? And then he's like, this is all the mistakes that you're still doing. This is the sin that you're still committing. Like, and that's
it
where
literally
it's
took
at.
you one day. It took you 10 minutes.
Yes. Like another little like mini testimony. When I was in the internship, I remember they gave us a day off, like a day to go home. I think it was
A Saturday before.
Father's Day.
Oh.
I don't know if it was Father's
I
Day.
know what
It
you
was
mean.
some like,
It was a holiday.
it was a holiday where it was like
Was
with
it
your
Mother's Day?
family.
No,
Maybe it was
Mother's Day.
Mother's
is
Day.
It had to be
later.
Father's Day. It was
had to be
Father's Day.
I went home and I was on top of the world. And then the enemy tested me and I failed because I got a message from my best friend's ex. And he was just going in and he was like cussing me out and he was telling me, da, 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 da. And instead of taking the high road and being all holy and
I forgive
godly,
you.
I was like, it's okay. I also attacked you back.
You said
I
copy,
was like,
change some
copy,
words. Yeah,
change some words, and sent it back. Essentially.
Yeah.
And then it was so humbling coming back from that day off and being like,
Dang,
I less than 30 minutes out in the world. I was messed up.
That's so crazy. Because, like, that, I didn't realize that happened to me too, but not the same story. But, like, that same day for Father's Day, my cousin was in an accident, a really, really bad accident. Like I'm so, praise God, basically. But I remember just being so mad because he almost,
Because he's alive. Yeah.
yes. And I was just being so mad, and me and my dad got in the biggest argument. I was like, "Just take me back to church," blah blah. And that, I swear, in that moment too, I remember that Father's Day is the day I forgave my dad and I prayed over him. And then, like, literally, like an hour later, I got so mad and I was like,
Literally.
"What is this?"
And it's just
and then they come
so-
back to church and everyone's like, "Say blah blah blah." I'm like, "Hey guys," like as if I wasn't crying an hour ago.
I'm saying it's just like, I swear, and not even in the internship, like just in your life, when you start going after Christ like never before and you're like in it and you're taking things out of your life, the first thing the enemy is going to do when you get anything back to what you were doing is he's going to attack you. And how you take that attack is honestly, it's going to show your character, because it showed my character.
It showed what
like,
you learn.
Yeah, because I thought I would never like go back to how I was or doing the things that I would do. And then God allowed that to happen so that I could be humbled.
And I think, and from y'all's story, it sounds like good that it happened, but more good that it happened before you actually ended the internship and said, at the end, now you're on your own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm so actually glad that they gave us that time to go
That
out in the
day
world.
out.
And it was like, I think it was like 2 weeks in or something, or 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
Like it was so new.
It was like closer to the middle.
Yeah.
So.
It was so new that I was like it was enough to the point where I was like, okay, I learned a lot, or I learned a lot, and I could go out and then like I felt like a baby like trying to walk, like, oh, gotta come back
And
inside.
then you fall and you
It's
gotta
like,
go back.
Man, I have a visual in my head. It's kind of like whenever you take that, not day off, but like you're in something for so long, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to take some time away to reflect. Or I guess, sorry, we talked about Friends before where it's like, this is the break. This is the break that you get where it's like you're taking a day off from the church or from being in the internship, and you're like, whoa, like you realize a lot of stuff. One, you realize, okay, I'm not as up high as I thought I was. I still need a lot of work.
Yeah.
And what's most important is I want to go back.
Yeah.
Because I need God.
It's like, and it humbles you to a point where you're like, because your pride is such a big thing and such a strong, like I've underestimated pride time and time again.
Yeah.
But it's like, it shows you your pride and where you think that you're at. And then it's like, here's where you actually are. You have to get to this. And even when you get to this, you still have a billion more things to like do. And it's just, I don't know, to me, it was very encouraging in that time. And I still think back to that time, anytime that I'm like, oh, I'm good. Because I'm never like, I'm never good. Like I could always grow in one way or another. And how does this relate to?
It goes back to it because Ruth is humble. She's
Ruth is humble.
She like from going from Moab to picking to just walking into Bethlehem and everyone like staring at her like, who is this, blah 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 blah, to going and picking up the barley, to being at his feet, you know. like she's just such a humble woman. She puts away her pride and she's like, I gotta take care of myself and I have to take care of Naomi. Like he provides.
Yeah.
And it's just like the fact that it's not like she had no other option.
No.
She could have gone back to Moab, and I'm sure like
she would have married like that.
Her, she's beautiful, so she would have been married like that.
Yeah.
She would have, and not just in Moab, even in Israel, she could have taken a lot of other routes.
She also could have left Naomi.
Yeah.
In Israel. Like once they got there.
Her loyalty, her humility, like her selflessness.
Her bravery.
It just shows you not just women, because yes, women like go and try and be like Ruth in this sense, but also like men, even like you can do the same things that Ruth are doing. You can be humble. You can not let your pride get.
Or even if you use Boaz as an example, where it's like, I think even Boaz is being humble in that sense of like, he's like, there's a thing now where it's like if a woman proposes to you, people they're like, you let a woman propose to you?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, here we see it as like, he's like, dang. Really?
Yeah. It's like when you get guys flowers.
I love getting guys flowers.
It's just like that, and it's just being able to like. It's not a girly thing.
No,
like,
it's just an act of
we
love.
love you.
Yeah.
So and it just goes on to 10. I think verse 10.
Okay, so we see that's when kind of like what we were talking about before, where Boaz accepts her offer, but he's like, but first we got to check out. There's another guy, and it's crazy that he knows it off the top of his head, because that implies kind of that he's already thought about it.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Where he's like, just so you know, there is someone else who's more qualified. So let's go talk to him, or I'm gonna talk to him, and if he declines, I will do it.
Yeah, and even that of like he didn't have to bring up that information. Yeah. Because he could have been like, you like me? Score.
Yeah.
Like,
let's get married right now. Yeah.
And it's just like what is that? Like
his obedience to the Lord and to the law that the Lord set before him.
Yes, and being like, I'm going to do things right. Like, I would love to marry you right now in this moment, in this second, but I'm going to follow what the Lord is calling me to do. I love to cover your nice.
But yeah, and then, same thing. And then even like, just to finish up the chapters, he's kind of like, okay, also, you're in this place. Let's get you. You just got to get out. Like once you can stay here for the night, but you got to get out in the morning just because it looks a little suspicious.
Yeah. And it would put like a lot of rumors and like stuff on
Ruth and Naomi and Boaz.
Yeah. And just being able to protect all three of them is, I don't know. I see that as a manly trait of being able to like, I'm going to look out for you. Yeah. I'm going to look out for.
Also, it's like in the middle of the night. So the fact that he let her stay and like didn't send her home. Like who wants to walk?
And then he also sent her home with food
for her and Naomi. I read that.
I forgot about that.
My gosh.
Yes.
That's
I
what
was just like
about. Like he the only cares for her. He cares for her family. They're a package deal.
Yeah.
And it's not even by blood.
And I think a lot of people, when they're like, I want a Boaz man, it's chapter 2. For me, it's chapter 3. It's this, like, getting this far and being like, okay, I'm going to send you home with food for you and your mother-in-law to take care of you guys.
Provide for both of y'all, not just you, but all of you.
But that's just such a, I don't know, that's such a manly thing to do. Like, provide and protect and, like, and I know I was just talking to Alex about this where I was like, a lot of guys, because Valentine's just happened, not to date the episode, but
it's fine.
Valentine's just happened. And a lot of guys were like, she's not going to get me flowers, so why would I get her flowers? Or she's not going to get me a gift, so why would I get her a gift? And I'm like, are you a girl? I'm like, are you legit a girl right now? Because it's like, the way I think of it with that specific thing, it's like, you're thinking it as a transactional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, she has to get you something so that you can give something.
And that's unfortunately how I would say even love looks a lot like nowadays, where it's like, I'll do something for you only if, like, I know I'm going to get something.
And not just men to women, but a lot of women to men, where it's like, I want this from you. I want,
mm-hmm.
but they're not.
Don't expect anything from me.
Yeah.
I might get you something, but don't expect anything.
It's coming
and it's such like a backwards way of like, even because so much of this is like love, right? And even more so the way that God loves us, where it's like God gives us love and he pours out. He fills our cup and it's overflowing. And there is absolutely nothing we can give back to him, right?
Exactly.
And we're just being obedient to him and doing what he asks. He asks us to let it overflow and pour it into another person, right?
Mhm.
And it's like so much of that, like that's what love is. And that's what I know that's what I want in a relationship, where it's like I will love on you and I will give you everything I have, and I don't necessarily expect anything from you. And you get what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I would love to get something back, but don't ever feel pressured to be like you get what I
Like,
mean?
yeah. And it's not even that. It's like, it's not like a lot of people will take that and be like, oh, you have to be a billionaire and like have a
Mhm.
car. And like, no, I want you to put in the effort, like
Yeah.
to try. Because
If
Boaz,
your best is just like, give me your best. Doesn't
Yeah.
have to be great.
especially,
but
and
give me
then,
your
and
best.
then like tying it back to what I said about Valentine's Day, like the flowers, like, dude, flowers are growing on the side of the highway. This is Texas, dude. Like,
There's
go
a
get,
blue bonnet right there.
like, pick it
Break
up.
the law,
break
pick it,
the
yeah.
law. I'm just like, it's just like the way that relationships are nowadays are
Mhm.
so backwards. And it's just the relationship that I want and have, I think, is just like being able to give without expecting anything back and being able to try for each other.
Mhm.
Because that's the way I think God has called us to love, the way that he loves, like you said,
Yeah.
overflowing. And it's just like, I want to try my hardest because I will never, ever, ever be able to love my partner the way that God loves my partner,
Mhm.
but I can try.
Yeah.
So it's just,
That
it's
was
just that.
Beautiful.
Thank you, girl.
Your boyfriend is so lucky.
So Ruth chapter 4.
Ruth chapter 4.
This is whenever Boaz goes to redeem his girl, to get
Oh, yeah,
his girl.
It says Boaz marries Ruth. Spoiler, but yeah.
It's a spoiler in the title, but whatever.
And really quick, going back to the last verse of chapter 3, it says, Naomi says, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." Meaning right after that whole little encounter the night before, like he's like, proposal. He's like, I want to marry her today.
Boaz
So
couldn't
he
wait.
goes.
He's like kicking his feet. He's like,
yes. And then later on, this is when he goes and meets the other redeemer, who's
Uh-huh.
a closer relative.
Does it even name him?
No,
I don't
It
think
just
so.
says, yeah, it doesn't.
No.
It says
No.
the guardian redeemer he mentioned came along.
I love that in verse 1 of 4, it says, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." Like that's what Boaz says.
Uh-huh.
It's just like, get up.
It's like,
I know, he's like,
Sit down.
we need to have a talk.
It's like, we need to chat, brother.
And it's like, oh, it's
And then I do like that, like, kind of, I guess, because, I mean, we see that Boaz clearly has great respect for other people, and he's shown great character, so much so that he can literally get, like it says, he took 10 elders of the town and said, sit here. And they listened. And
Literally, I
this
could
shows
try-
his character.
I could get 10 of my closest friends and they would not listen. I'd be like, can you come?
It would take a while.
They'd be like, do I have to?
Yeah.
You would
But-
be like that.
You would. Jacoby, I'd be like, Jacoby, can you come here for? And he'd be like, no.
Be like, is there food?
But it's just like he has that authority, or that people respect him because he's so kind.
Yeah, this is a man of honor.
Yeah.
Like he is doing things by the book to make sure that he gets his girl.
Yeah. So I'm trying to.
So
see
yeah,
where I
we
jumped
see
down
that
to.
he talks to homeboy. We were gonna call him homeboy.
We don't know
because
his
he doesn't
name.
have a name.
So homeboy, it is.
And he's telling them kind of like, I'm doing this here so that way like transaction goes good. So that way we're like, I'm in the clear because
Yeah.
I want to be in the clear.
And then he goes and he tells the dude like, so you get this land.
Mhm.
No, but he makes it seem like a really good deal.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, he's like,
He's
here's the
like he's
pluses.
not half in it. He's selling this.
Mhm.
And then I think it's when he
It's like there's Naomi,
And then the guy-
all
yeah.
of these, and then the guy's
And
like,
I'll take it.
do it.
I'll take it.
And then he's like, also, just so we're clear, Ruth, the Moabite, will also be part. You'll have to marry her. And
You'll
he's
have to-
like, never mind.
he's like, psych,
ABM. Yeah.
I'm good. And then I think, I don't know if he double checks or like, are you sure or whatever.
Let me see. I think he kind of. Oh no, he literally says, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I
Yeah.
cannot do it." And then here's the part which was funny because it's just random. It says, "Now in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transaction in Israel."
That's hilarious to me because why? Like, hey, Sam, can I buy that pen off you? Here's my flip flop.
Mhm.
Here's my like
Oh, it's
sandal.
like, hey, you bought this house for me? Okay, I need your shoe
I
to
need your
finalize
shoe.
the deal.
Or like how, I don't know why. Like, why does that prove
I don't know. I'm sure there's some reason for it.
Like,
Maybe
was like,
it's
hey,
the feet thing again.
That's a sign of respect, maybe.
Yeah, because I'm
Do you
like,
think they wear it? Like,
No.
they're like,
no, they just they frame it. They
They
put it in the
frame
house.
it.
It's like proof that you bought the house.
It's like the
This
deed,
is the
the
sandal.
deed, yeah.
it is the deed.
This
yeah.
is the sandal that I got from the dude that sold me
It's
this.
like, check it. It's his foot. Yeah.
It was like,
So-
is it his size?
So he takes off his shoe, the homeboy, and he
Mhm.
gives it to Boaz and says, "Buy it for yourself." So that, and then he does this in front of witnesses, so a
Yes.
minimum of 10 plus whoever's around, like walking by,
Mhm.
because it's in public. So Boaz wants to make it known. For me, this seems like a public declaration that Boaz does for Ruth.
Yeah,
Like, I'm gonna marry this girl. I'm like,
I just love
You know
that.
what's also funny is because it kind of feels like he played him, where he's like,
it did feel like that.
you're gonna get all this, and then he's like, okay, and he's like, I know this homeboy's not gonna want to marry her, so I get.
But just because
And
she's
then
a
he's
Moabite.
like, yeah,
Like, he didn't even show her who, like,
he didn't show his hand until the very end.
And it's not even in the way also, okay, Boaz is a man of honor, but Boaz didn't, on that part, I noticed that he didn't like hype up Ruth. I'm saying like,
Yeah,
oh,
like, he didn't push the guy
He
on
said
it.
that she was a Moabite, knowing that Israelites hate Moabites. And
like, here's
because he's
Ruth.
like, I look
The
at
Moabite.
he wants her.
yeah, I get that. I get that.
And I understand.
I'm like,
I think
And
that's
then verse 9 is like, then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, today you are witnessing that I have bought Naomi, all the property of whatever their names
Elimelech.
are. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite as my wife in order to maintain the deed of the dead with his property. So his name will not disappear from among the family or his hometown. Today, you are witnesses.
I think that's like, the witnesses are so important because he could have done this in secret. He could have done this in private, but he has people there so that it's clear, like, I
He's
am
showing it
marrying
off,
this
right?
woman and that reminds me of like, you know, like sometimes in relationships, guys or girls, like, they don't want to show off their partner. Or like they don't want to love loudly,
almost like a shamefulness.
Yeah,
and I feel like that is something easily that could have happened with Ruth, considering that she is a Moabite. That he's just like, yeah, I'll marry you, but we can't
tell anybody or show it.
We won't tell anyone you are a Moabite.
But
that's
Boaz,
a part of yourself that but Boaz is like, no.
Boaz loves loudly, and that's so great. Like, I just love that because I just saw a post on it like the other day where it's like every guy is like trying to be nonchalant now, where it's like, no, I don't care, like I didn't even. But it's like girls want to be loved loudly, like they want to be like, this is my girlfriend, like this is one of my
like, you better hype me up.
Yeah, because it's just something about that, and Boaz does that. Like, and it's so funny because this is like something I saw in an Instagram post the other day, but like it's in the Bible, like love your wife loudly.
So then the next part is just, and then the elders and all the people at the gate said, like, they literally, I think it still once again goes to show kind of the respect they have for Boaz, where they're like, they bless him pretty much. They're like, like that. It's like, we're your witnesses, and then we're gonna bless you. Like,
and then even though that Israelites don't like Moabite women, and they know that Boaz, this guy that they respect and they care about, is marrying a Moabite woman, they're like, Boaz, we trust you. We trust that you are choosing the woman that you're choosing. Like, okay, who are we to like go against you?
Then I love that the next part says Naomi gains a son.
I know.
Because now she has Boaz as her son after Ruth marries her. So it says, I mean, pretty much the same story as where you keep going is Boaz takes Ruth, becomes his wife. And then not only that, the Lord gives them a child.
Which is, to me, when I was reading that, I was like, right after that, I don't know how long it's been, but right after that, she has a son. And I'm like, wow, the Lord is
like,
so...
It's like literally the night of.
That's what I think.
Literally.
But when I was reading back, I was like, wait, like, when they went to Moab and Ruth married her first son, the first husband, like, she was with him for 10 years. And I know that after, especially probably after the husband died, they probably tried harder for both of the women to conceive, to have a son, to have some kind of
lineage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then but until the span of 10 years, she's still not both of the women have yet to conceive. But the moment that she marries Boaz and they have that sense of like love in that night, you know, she gets a son. I'm like, whoa.
That's so cool.
Out,
and then I just love it because like it goes into verse 14, which I'm gonna read. It says, the woman said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. And I'll read 15. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given birth to him. So if we go back to like Ruth 1, like Naomi is in this place of she's like given up. She's like
lost everything. Yeah.
She's lost everything. She's lost her husband. She's lost her sons. She even tells when she told Orpah and Ruth to go, like she's like, I don't have anything for you. I have nothing to give you. I have nothing for you to live off of. And now in Ruth 4, the end of this book, she has not only a son, but she has a grandson. And then she has a home, like she has a place. She's probably going by Naomi again. Like, it's just so cool that she started off on such a low. And in the end, she not only got good for herself, but she brought Ruth along and she got good for Ruth. So yeah, that's just so cool.
And then they named they had the son, they named him Obed, who became the father of Jesse, who became the father of King David.
Yeah.
And then I think the last part is just kind of going through the
genealogy,
the genealogy of David, i.e. the genealogy of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that kind of closes out with I guess even if you look at it as just a story, it's closing out with like, here's the reason why we're even telling you about Ruth. Number one, because it's a good story. It's a good story, and it's a good
love story.
It's a good show of what like love is, and like the kind of desperation that you can come from, and what God can take you into, and then also what we talk about with the Bible, where like all of the Bible points to Jesus, right? And here we see it in two ways. Number one, his genealogy. But number two, and I feel like is most, and we've already kind of talked about it a bit, is more it's kind of like a reflection of God's love for us. Yeah. Right? In the way that Jesus is our Redeemer. He loves us enough. He came down to earth. And he didn't need to, but he did because he loves us so much that he's willing to give us more than what we are willing to give him, pretty much. Yeah. And then redeem us. Yeah. In everything we do. And I love it. I know. I love Ruth. And that's why I want to talk about like Ruth, because it was just so incredible. There's so much to look forward to. And I know that Ruth is kind of a love story in a sense, but not just a love story between a man and a woman, but a love story between God and his daughter, and God and his son, because it's so like incredible. And like you said earlier, like God isn't clearly in this. Like he
doesn't
make an appearance in the sense of like God did this and he said this. And he showed up, and he's blinding flash of light. But he shows up in the what I wanted to talk about even more is that he gives us the free will, and he determines what's going to happen. So we see it in. I mean, we've already kind of discussed, like touched on it, but I guess let's go through it more. Is like first he knows the mistake that that Naomi makes, and that is him giving her that choice. She didn't have to go. She didn't technically have to obey her husband, but she did. Yeah. And they left, and he gives her that choice. But in that choice, he is still working on something for her, right? Yeah. And we see that in even the story of Ruth, like Ruth coming from the land of Moab into the land of Israel. And now she is part of the genealogy of Jesus. Yeah. And just that whole, like we said, there are no coincidences, right? Whenever she coincidentally started picking from Boaz's farm, it's like, no, it wasn't a coincidence. It's right where God placed her for that time. Yeah. It's like, it's no coincidence that Boaz was like, you know what, I'm going to go out and look at my field. And he's like, today, it's just randomly. And then like we see that throughout the feet thing. Yeah. Where it's like, it's weird, but I mean, but it works. Also a cultural thing.
Think that Ruth would have gotten to Israel regardless if Naomi had made that decision or not to go with her husband or not. If Naomi were like to tell her husband like maybe we should stay, and they decided to stay, Ruth somehow would have gotten to Boaz. Like they still would have come together. And that's just goes another way to show how like no matter what you do, no matter what mistakes you make, like God will still work within them. Like it is never too late. It is never too like you're never too far gone.
You've never done enough to lose the grace
because God loves us so much. And that's so incredible to just know that we're all like children of God, and he loves us in such a way that no matter what we do, he's always going to be by our side. He's always going to be teaching us and growing us.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so that ends Ruth, but do you guys have any other closing statements?
I don't think.
I just want to love like Ruth and Boaz.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll put her number on screen.
no, you're so annoying.
I'm gonna put it behind a paywall.
Behind a paywall is crazy.
Yeah, see how your
It's
jokes
gonna take
aren't
one.
funny?
Wow. Yeah, I'm
Wow.
really gonna do it.
No, I think my only like final statement would be like, for like women and men, find your Boaz, find your Ruth, find your person who is like, who loves you the way that God wants you to be loved. And then also, I think the big picture in Ruth is that no matter what you do, no matter what path you take, God has something for you. And it can be discouraging a lot of the time to be like, am I even doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing what God wants me to do? But it's just like, you are. God has you in a place. Nothing is a coincidence. He has you where he wants you. He's growing you. He's preparing you. He has something big for you.
I encourage you guys just read Ruth. It's four chapters,
How
four
long did it
books.
take y'all to read it? It took
4
me like
chapters.
20
It-
minutes.
It
I
did
was
not
taking
take
notes on
long.
everything. I was saying you can read it in a day, but
it took me about
spread
20
it.
to 30 minutes to read this, but I was also like trying to take notes too, but I was like, it does not take very long.
No.
And also, the first time I read it, like I said, I was like, what kind of love story is this? And I'm rereading it, and I reread it again. I read this story 3 times, and every time I see something new, like even
Yeah.
like talking to you guys, I was like, what? I did not realize that.
Yeah, Ruth is so beautiful. Like I said, it's one of my favorite books in the
Yeah.
Bible. Like I would put it that high, where it's just like it's such a story that
It's
shows
like-
so much.
I'm gonna say Ruth the Bible.
No,
Even though it's part of the Bible.
Part of the
That's
Bible.
what I.
no,
That's the
it's
joke.
like it's just a love story. Like I said, a love
Yes.
story, and
If-
not just between a girl and a guy.
If you like rom-coms or like romance, or even if you're a guy, you don't even have to like romance. This shows you the kind of man to be for your future
For your
wife.
future wife, or for
Or
your
for your
girlfriend,
wife, or yeah, or your
like,
girlfriend
whatever
right
you
now.
do.
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
So Jacoby, be like,
Santo. What should
for
I
your
do?
future
He was
wife.
being generous today.
Oh yeah, you're
Very generous, very
you're right,
generous
brother.
guy.
Thank you.
That you're already taking.
No, just
We compliment you, and
Yeah.
you take it the wrong
you take it the
because
wrong
it's
way.
nice.
because it's wrong.
Yeah, sinner. Nice.
Shut up. Okay, I think
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I've never known how to close this out, so let's try a closing statement. Thank you for watching.